Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. For one of the scenarios in Ranges of Shadow Deep, you need nest trees which are home to giant spiders. In the past, I've just used tokens to mark where those are on the board, but as I am planning to do a recorded playthrough of that particular scenario at some point soon on the channel, I wanted to have some proper nest trees, so I thought I would make my own and show how I did it in this video. So the first thing I have done is I have ordered some pre-made trees on eBay. These were really cheap. They come in two sizes and it's way easier than going through the effort of making your own, and you don't even need to worry about painting them. They're pre-flocked, they're on brown trunks, and I think they look fine as is. The only thing to note here was when I ordered these, I didn't realise they had these quite large spikes on the bottom of them, and I think the seller did include those spikes in the overall height. So that's something to watch out for. However, I'm still happy with the sizes I got here. You can see compared to this Draugr from Elder Scrolls, it's good sized trees for the biggest size, and they're going to be perfect for what I'm doing here. First thing, of course, we need a base for each of the trees. I'm going to make bases out of these polystyrene ceiling tiles. And what I'm planning to do is I'm going to put one tree on each base, because then I can use them as specific objective markers for this particular scenario, but I can also arrange them into different formations for woodland, for Dungeons and Dragons, if I ever need my adventurers to go into a haunted wood or a haunted forest. So we're cutting the polystyrene into decent sizes. I'm just going to put the tree in the center of the polystyrene there to see that I have got enough of a base, because if you make the base too small, then your tree is going to fall over. It's going to be too top heavy. You can resolve that by putting a little bit of weight or something into the base if you need to. But once you've cut it to size, you need to make a nice shape, a nice oval shape or a slightly irregular shape. And I'm just angling my blade at 45 degrees here to cut a sloping angle all the way around, and that would just make it blend a little better into the tabletop. Of course, when you're doing this, cut away from your fingers, keep your fingers away from the blade. Do not lose a finger for your hobby, it is not worth it. So I've just gone all the way around there, cutting a sloping edge. With that done, I've put down some greaseproof paper here so that we don't stick to our work surface, and I've got a piece of corrugated card here. This is actually just a piece of Amazon packaging, and I'm going to paint PVA glue over the bottom side of it to seal that surface. And you want a pretty thick piece of card here. I thought this piece of card was thick enough, but as it turned out it wasn't, and a little bit later in the video you'll see that I actually ended up sticking a second piece of card to it to make the bases thicker and a little bit more robust. So, you know, make sure you get a decent thickness of corrugated card. And we're sealing the bottom here just to make sure we don't get moisture and things into the card. With that side done, we have to paint PVA onto the top surface, and that's because this is the side that we're going to apply our polystyrene sections that we've cut out. And I've done 6, and this piece of card is going to be just big enough to lay out all 6 on. And you'll see that each base is a slightly different size, a slightly different shape. But I've made them all big enough that they provide a big enough footprint to provide some stability for the tree. You can of course do these in much larger sections with several trees on each base, if you prefer. And indeed I have actually done that myself with other trees that I've made. I'm now placing a second piece of card on top, and then I'm going to put a big nerdy weight on top of that, and I'm going to leave it to dry. At this point you can see I have, as I mentioned earlier, applied a second piece of card, and then I had to actually paint the bottom of that piece of card to seal it again, because it is important to make sure all of the card surfaces are sealed. But now we're going to cut all the way around the shape. Again, being very careful not to lose a thumb or a finger. Opposable thumbs are a treasure and should be preserved. And we want to make sure that when we're cutting as close to the polystyrene as possible. We don't really want a layer of card around the edge. But then you end up with something a little bit like that. And what I'm doing now is I'm going to cut a small hole into the very center, and this is where the tree is going to go. So I'm cutting all the way around it. I'm not cutting all the way through what we've made, I'm just cutting down to the card. So I'm just cutting through the polystyrene section, and then I'm going to pick out any of the polystyrene so we can see the card, but we haven't gone through that card. And the reason we're doing that is because I have here a raw plug. If you have a toolbox, you probably have a bunch of these. And an alternative to these would be a metal nut if you want something a little bit sturdier. But all I've done here is I've cut a small section of the raw plug. And I'm actually going to test fit this against those stubs on the trees. And you can see that they slot in quite nicely there. I have actually trimmed the spike on the bottom of the tree to fit in that raw plug. And then we're going to use PVA glue to seal the top of the polystyrene and also to glue our raw plug in place. As I said, if you want to use a nut or something instead of that raw plug, that will provide more weight and more stability. But really anything like that will do, because we're just reinforcing the hole where the tree will be placed so that we're not pushing it directly into the polystyrene. It will just make it a little bit sturdier, and it actually provides an option to make the trees removable if you want to do that, which we will talk about in a moment. So for now, I'm just covering the whole thing in PVA. And because I was raised on Blue Peter, here is one I made earlier. And you can see the tree will just sit inside there, and ta-da! That looks all right. If the tree was in snow. But of course, the tree can pull straight back out again. I am now painting black all over the base. I'm using black because I want the ground to look a little bit diseased, but also because I didn't have a lot of brown easily available. Once that paint is dry, I'm going to use several different types of scenic scatter. I'm just going to paint PVA over the top of it and then apply the scatter, which I have done in previous videos. And while the scenic flock is drying on the bases, we're going to deal with the trees. And we're going to make them look like they are infested with spiders by using these Halloween decorations. This is the stuff you can pick up really cheap around Halloween in discount stores. And look, this stuff even has little spiders in it, which are very good if you need a cheap source of spiders for D&D or something like that. But you can see this stuff, you can just tease it out and make it thinner and thinner, and it's designed to look like spiders' webs anyway for decorating your house at Halloween, so it should look pretty decent for representing spiders' webs on the tabletop as well. So we're teasing out the fibres here, stretching it out, and it doesn't really matter how you do this. You can stretch it out really thin, or you can leave it a bit clumpy, however you want to do it really. But just tease it out into sections, and then it gets messy, so I've put some gloves on. I have here a bowl of scenic cement, which is basically watered down PVA glue, and we are going to use this as a dunk for our trees. So I've got the tree, I'm going to put it in, I'm going to swirl it around, and this is doing two things. First of all, it is reinforcing the flock that is already attached to the tree. It's making it so the flock doesn't keep shedding off. But more importantly, it's going to make it easier for our spider webs to adhere to the trees. We don't want a lot on there. This is going to take ages to dry anyway, so we want to shake off a lot of the excess. But when we're happy with that, we can set aside our scenic cement and we can start applying the spider's webs. And all I'm going to do here is I'm going to push it on, and then I'm going to tease and wrap it around the tree. Just making sure we cover a good amount of the tree, and you can make it so the whole thing is completely covered, or you can have just a little bit. You can make it so things clump. You can do whatever you want with it. Get artistic. Pull it and poke it and twist it until you are happy with how it looks, and then just leave it to dry. And as I mentioned, it will take ages for this to dry, especially if it's not very warm weather. But just leave it somewhere, give it 24 hours at least to dry off. And those areas where it looks really clumpy and horrible, bear in mind that PVA glue does dry clear, so where it's all clumpy like that, it won't look that bad when it dries. And you should have trees that look like they're wrapped in spiders' webs. And then here we go, we've got our base with all of the scenic flock fully dry on it. And of course we have our hole that's been reinforced with a raw plug, and because we have done that, we can actually make it so that we can do interchangeable trees, as I mentioned. So I've got my tree here with the spider webs, and I can pop that into the base. I've trimmed the peg accordingly, so I can just push that into the base and leave it. If it's a little bit of a loose fit, then you can wrap some tape around the bottom of the tree just to make sure it's a snug fit. But then if you want to change it out, you can just pop it back out and replace it with a different tree. This also, of course, makes it easier to store your trees. But that is it, and these are my finished trees. I've done 5 with the spider webs wrapped around it, and I can use those in my adventures, and hopefully they will look half decent on camera. But that is it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you've really enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing if you already do so, and hopefully I'll see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.